What is the difference between a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship and actually getting married other than the fact that you are legally recognized as a couple? I believe it's the depth of commitment. Not to say that people who love each other and stay together for years aren't committed. But when you legally bind yourself to someone else, it makes it quite a bit harder to just walk away. It also means that you accept joint responsibility for your soul in a way that can legally and financially affect your life forever, even if the relationship falls apart. And while former BFGFs can affect your life negatively after a breakup, former spouses can do it a whole lot worse. So, it's accepting the responsibility for and possibility of all consequences. That's a deep commitment. Imo. Well, let's see. You get in a car accident and you're unconscious and the doctor needs to cut one of your nuts off or you'll only have a 25% chance of surviving. The doc can't get that permission off your girlfriend you've had for 3 weeks, but can from your wife. Your wife is your official family member, legally recognized next of kin. And breaking up and divorce are very different from each other. When we were boyfriend and girlfriend, the option to easily leave was always there, and it does change things to have that option go away, even when you want to be married. I was with my husband for several years before we got married, and the week we eloped it was like someone flipped a switch in my brain and I just kept thinking, oh my god, we're stuck with each other forever. And I got very angsty and irritable with him for quite a while because I think I had this idea in my head of how a husband should act, based on my dad, who is an excellent husband to my mom. And I was mad because my own husband was different from that idea in my head. We had to have a lot of talks about how the entire dynamic of our relationship had shifted and our expectations for each other in these new roles. I really was surprised by it, and so was he. We'd been together for so long that we didn't think marriage would change anything for us. But it definitely did. The first 6 months were kind of tough, but things improved as we continued to talk through it all. Now, we communicate better, have clearer expectations of each other, and are more committed than before with a much more stable relationship. Recently married, already. When we argue, it's different. Leaving isn't on the table. So escalating the fight is pointless. And we're quicker to refocus and figure out the problem we have. We're conscious of the fact that we're building something bigger than our individual happiness. And that frees us from the loneliness of being selfish. Marriage is a commitment. In a legal sense, but also a cultural sense. Nearly every human culture has some sort of wedding and marriage tradition with a couple's friends, family, community, and religion. You make a lifelong permanent commitment to another human being in front of everyone you know. Your family becomes their family and vice versa. Your social network recognizes and accepts the union. You can't just wake up one day and leave. You are tied to them and considered one unit. Edit. There's also the factor of obligation responsibility. If one spouse gets sick, the other is obligated to care for them. If one loses their job, the other is responsible financially. You can't just walk away from a marriage when things get tough. It elevates the stakes of everything. It's no longer I got in a fight with my boyfriend, it's I got in a fight with my husband who I have promised to spend my whole life with. Things that may not have been a huge deal before. Like your girlfriend's incapability of remembering to start the dishwasher after she loads the dishes turns into something you look at and think, wow, am I really going to spend my life with someone who does this all the time? As someone who was married very young, divorced, and now engaged to someone who fits me much better, I think the most important thing you can do when you are choosing someone to marry is to pick someone whose faults you can live with. Yes, he doesn't take the garbage out till the very last second. But he's never once yelled at me or called me names. He might be terrible at budgeting, but I am good at it, so we'll be fine. He makes me laugh harder than anyone. And tells me every day how much he loves me and that I'm beautiful. I'm sure when we get married there will be higher stakes to things. But if we can survive being engaged through a pandemic, I think we can handle anything. My BF told me something one day. Some people stay together because they are married. I stay with you because I love you. And it reassured me. Every day he stays with me is a day that he loves me. The whole 10 years of it. Married. I would be scared that he'd be staying with me only because it's cheaper than divorcing. Then again, I've got some issues, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. The difference is building a life together. With boyfriend-girlfriend you may not have invested in living together, planning your future, having kids, etc. I didn't get married until after I had kids. To me, kids are the ultimate commitment. No return policies. Marriage is a lifelong commitment, and that fact alone impacts the relational dynamic. There is still a cultural shame aspect to divorce. Choices on forms are single, married, divorced, widowed, other. Once married. I was never really single again. I was divorced. When a relationship ended, I could get drunk, cry a while, put on some girl power tunes, and get back on the horse that threw me. When my marriages ended, it took time to realign my whole world. Even when a marriage doesn't last a lifetime, it has a lifetime impact. There is a depth in the relationship that is amazing. We truly became a team partnership that is a joyous commitment for life. It hit me a few days later after being married. We dated 5 years and have now been married 34 years. Not everyone should get married. Yeah, you don't need to get married before having kids or do things in a relationship in a specific order. Time to break those standards. Also, many people on Reddit seem to be in 7-year relationships at most. I feel like a 10+ year relationship is grounds for saying you've had a long relationship with someone. Not saying every 10+ year relationship is healthy or a good one. I asked the same question for the longest time. It wasn't until my LTRGF started pushing to get married that I seriously considered what that meant. And I found I could not do it. Even though I didn't understand at the time why not. That relationship ended. I went through a difficult time trying to figure out all my feelings and assumptions about relationships in an effort to learn what made for a healthy, safe relationship. 8 years later, I stood with my now wife in front of family and friends and proclaimed my love for my wife and promised to work through our issues and forego any other relationships. It was a transformative moment for me, and has provided us a great foundation for getting through tough times. When you get married, you take on the pressure of people expecting you to have kids and joint bank accounts. 2 kids out of the way, and still most older generations don't get why my wife and I don't have a joint account. Before we got married and just lived together, we divided up the bills. This is your responsibility. This is my responsibility. No argument over money or spending because we each had our own money and responsibilities. When we got married and had kids, obviously, there came more bills. So we divided those up. The main argument in marriage is money. Mostly who is making more and spending more. It becomes less likely if you each have your own pot to buy from. Maybe this is more common than I realize. But where I'm from, people still think it's outrageous. I'm not married. But I'd say when you get married, you basically give your life into their hands. If something happens to you and you end up in the hospital, your spouse gets to decide when to pull the plug. If you are not married, they might not even let them into the room. When you get married, it says you trust the other person with your life, with your finances, legal issues, and all that stuff that bind you when you are married. You'll get lots of comments about commitment, but that's irrelevant in modern society. The social stigma of divorce is gone, and the fear of having lied to God about till death do us part means less and less with each passing year as more and more weddings are secular. A marriage can end with relative ease nowadays. Let's face it. A 25-year mortgage or having kids is, legally, way more of a commitment than being married. Other than the legal aspect, there's no difference in the actual relationship. Marriage is our promise to keep trying. This is why people who get married to save their relationship is a bad idea. If you are in a burning house, do you really think locking the doors is gonna help? 27F divorced. For me, I felt differently towards the relationship. I worked harder to make it work. Treated him with a lot more respect than I feel I did with any past relationships. I was very young when I got married too, and I felt others respected me and saw me as more mature after we got married. Also, I'd previously had guys within my social circle hit on me, friends of friends, even while having a boyfriend, that they never did again after I was married. Some small things I've noticed since divorcing as well and now I'm with my current partner is that I don't feel very secure in my relationship. Just an observation, but I don't feel committed unless I'm married, so being in a relationship, albeit one of 2 years, feels less significant than my marriage, which lasted less time. My partner and I do not want marriage. We've never been the type to want it. We also don't want children. We've been together for nearly 10 years. But I guess the primary difference between us and most married couples I know is that our finances are separate. But we have credit cards we share. We split all bills. We do not rely on each financially like some married couples I know where the wives rely solely on the husband's income. We have sex more than most married couples I know of my friends who disclose that information. But otherwise there are no differences that I see. Beyond the fact that to separate we wouldn't need an attorney. However, we're looking to buy a home together soon. And at that point, if we separated, we would require some kind of legal work to figure out what to do with the jointly owned asset. But in terms of commitment or problems, it's all the same. He's committed to me and I to him. We have the same problems and the same joys as married couples. Vows. Everything changes when you swear to stay with each other through bad times and good times. Sounds cheesy, but after marriage you no longer have to suppress your emotions and opinions as much as during a relationship. The stress of you saying something and it changing the opinion your partner has of you is no longer as large. Planning for the future is no longer hypothetical. While you still enjoy the now, you also are thinking long term. Children, where to live, vacations, retirement, what's happening with your elderly relatives, insurance, etc. As a married couple you are building a life together. And the legal recognition makes doing that a lot easier. Taxes are also a lot better when you're able to file jointly as a married couple. That's why same-sex couples fought so hard to get that recognition. There was only so much they could do without it. And it left them and their partners vulnerable. Mentality shift is a thing, as some folk mention. Some view it as a way of binding together religiously, spiritually. Some view it as a way to get all their friends and family together to celebrate their love and kick off life family together. With legality of it there are a lot of perks. I think there are several hundred benefits legally. Big ones are tax breaks, medical contact decisions, beneficiaries, insurance and whatnot, service fiscally merged. Lot of doors open up with things like adoption and home ownership and ability to obtain a loan. My husband and I were together for 8 years before we got married. I thought there wouldn't be any difference in our relationship since we'd been together for so long. Boy, was I wrong. We communicate so much more now than we did when we were dating. I think knowing that there is no way out forces us to work on our relationship. Our relationship also got deeper now that we're married. I would highly recommend marriage if you have found you're someone special. Studies show that children raised by married couples have better outcomes than children raised by unmarried people, including those who cohabitate in monogamous live-together relationships. My now former wife and I lived together for over 3 years before we got married. We were, in all regards, a married couple, deeply committed to a long-term relationship. We eventually decided to make it official for the simple reason of no longer having to refer to each other as fiancé or boyfriend-girlfriend. Also, the parents were hassling us too much. So we just ran to the courthouse to shut them up. They were pissed. We lasted another 7 years. So it was a good run and we're still super close to this day. It's obviously a lot more serious. And a huge commitment. I feel like boyfriends, girlfriends are something you go through when you're young and have those puppy love butterflies. But the option to break up is always there. Marriage should also be based on a deep love. But a lot of it boils down to choices you make for one another. It's true that the honeymoon phase goes away. But a deeper love evolves. It's one that takes sacrifice, hardship, and a lot of emotional work. It comes down to two basic things. Do you want this person to be the mother-father of your children? Will this person take care of me when times are tough? And would I be willing to do the same? More care. You see the nitty-gritty parts of the relationship. I lived with my spouse as boyfriend-girlfriend. I was super reserved about being sick. What I needed. I didn't want to inconvenience him. Now 2 AM I need 7-Up, get up and go. You can own property in a tenancy by the entireties. Your spouse can't be called to testify against you due to spousal privilege. You can file your taxes as married and save money. You can inherit from each other if one dies without a will. The amount will vary depending on your jurisdiction. Financial interconnectedness. If you make more money, get that prenup. Or the other party can basically wreck your whole future if they decide they want a divorce. Absolutely nothing. My BF and I were never married, and when we split after 14 years I had to prove that we had legally separated. Even though we were never legally joined. Madness. I found it very liberating. Before we were married, I often felt limited in some ways. He was very happy in his career in our city. I was unhappy living there and directionless, and often felt that in order to find what I wanted to do, I would need to travel or move elsewhere. And I felt like that distance would make our relationship too difficult and would split us up. So I didn't do it. And then when we got married, suddenly I felt like, whatever happens, we have to make it work. We're fully committed. So if I wanted to go off and be a subtitler in Spain, or move to Norway to learn about outdoor kindergartens, suddenly I could, and he'd be here. And I'd be there. And we'd have made the commitment and it would just have to work. So I finally felt able to. I guess when you're in a relationship, you get to be a lot more immature. You don't have to always think about both of you. When you're married, you become more responsible and mature. The level of understanding is much more when you're married. Also, lesser sex sometimes. When you are married, you will be bound forever in some sense. Because that's what marriage was. Bound for eternity. No one cares who you ex-BFGF were. But people did care if you were married before. There was little difference between when she was my girlfriend and now that she's my wife. The difference is how her being my girlfriend felt compared to every other girlfriend I'd ever had. I bet you half of my stuff we will be together forever. In all seriousness, I got married so I could have my husband's last name, but I didn't officially change it yet, lol, and a little more peace of mind when it came to everything. We were together for 11 years before we got married and just ended up eloping to save some hassle. We are not religious people, and have been married for 7 years this month. So all in all it was not a major life changer, but I do love the face that he is my husband now and not just my boyfriend. I used to think this. It's wrong. The seriousness of the commitment is incomparable. Like saying what's the difference between a one-night stand and a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship? Double quote. Having one partner for the rest of your life, until one of you dies, is heavy stuff. Stuff you can't realize until you do it yourself.